we have got the brilliant Susan Coles who's with us here this morning. Before I do all the formal introduction stuff, I'm just going to tell you how Susan and I first met, which was years and years and years ago during a conference about building schools for the future. If anyone remembers that, that was sector. Um, and met Susan and Insight, and it's been a real privilege to every now and again manage to kind of find out ways to work with Susan over the years. So we're here this morning to talk about, interestingly, I think one of the last times that we sort of worked together was again in another one of my old jobs. And I used to work at Bridge Organisation down in London. And Susan came in to do a very similar briefing, I think, actually. It was around the time we had the last change in government. And we were at a moment where we were trying to work out, obviously, the massive switch over from to a new kind of Conservative and Lib Dem coalition about what was going on in terms of education policy. A lot of talk about Michael Gove at the time as well. And I think we're going to be doing a bit of a similar thing today, but less about Michael Gove, I think, today. Um, so Susan is incredible, kind of big actually in arts education. I know that she won't want me to say too much of this, but she works as a consultant, actually across kind of all different areas of education, from I think primary schools, secondary schools, HE, FE, kind of everywhere that you can imagine, but with a real background in visual art as well. And I think you'll probably hear a little bit about some of that. Um, and is one of those people that's kind of really involved from the policy and the practice all the way through to kind of what's happening with teachers in schools, and is regularly working with teachers in schools and understands that landscape really well as well. Um, so as well as being kind of a visual arts champion and activist, Susan's got kind of this huge national and international career as well, working as vice president for the International Society for Education Through Art, as a world councillor for the International Society for Education Through Art as well, representing lots of different groups. She's a member of the Alliance for Arts Education and is also secretary to the APPG, the All Party Parliamentary Group on Art, Craft and Design Education. The list goes on, and I'd encourage you all to kind of connect with Susan after this if you want to kind of find out more about her work via her LinkedIn as well. But I will hand over, Susan, to you and let you do some of the talking. One thing actually I should have just said is that we're going to probably do about two-thirds of this as kind of presentation this morning. If you've got questions, do pop them in the chat, and then there's going to be some time for discussion and lots of questions afterwards as well. But yeah, over to you, Susan.
Thank you, Anthony. And inspired by Erica this morning, I'm losing my voice. So if I suddenly stop, it's just to drink some water and get it back. Okay, it's lovely to meet everybody and see everybody. And I'm going to do the usual thing. I'm going to share my slideshow, but I do try to make it as visual as possible. And I'm going to talk through things rather than expect you to read every single thing that's up there in note form, okay? Because visual learner, I think in pictures, it's as simple as that. So Anthony, you just give me a shout if anything goes wrong with my slides or you can't see things, okay? Just put that one on. And we should be saying good morning to you all. And it is a good morning, everybody. It's a lovely day outside. I want to talk today, having talked to Anthony when he first approached me about this, about what's kind of happening in terms of arts policy within education and what is a day in the life of a school teacher like in 2025, because it's a hard life. A lot of my friends are still working in schools. I started my life as an art teacher and then a head of faculty before I became an independent consultant, and I'm very much a part of teacher networks, which nowadays are grassroots because there isn't anything to support them from local authorities, etc. And something that you might not have heard of before, which is called the wisdom of crowds, which has helped me to understand how people working together can actually be more successful. And my quote that I always give is quite simple. Art gave me my voice. It was the only thing in school, apart from English, which I really enjoyed, where I felt I could be myself. And when I look back on my life and when I look back on my schooling, it's the thing that made me what I am today. And I think nearly all of us around the virtual table know the power of the arts with young people with people of all ages, with people of all abilities and backgrounds and ethnicities. And I just think it's a part of our history, it's a part of our world, it's a part of being human. And for me, it's the whole point of being here. So I want to give you some context today because we are talking about education. So the important thing to remember, which also confuses the issue, is that education in the United Kingdom is devolved. So you have a different system in Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales, and England. So today we're talking about English education. So what we have is a Department for Education, and we have a Secretary of State for Education whose job is simple. They're responsible for the overall management and oversight of the education system within the country. They are responsible for setting curriculum standards, which they then hand out to Ofsted to test. They are actually tasked with establishing national curriculum standards that guide what happens in schools, and therefore what they would say is quality education. And most importantly at the moment, because we are in difficult times with this, they are responsible for managing school funding. So allocations for schools, resources for schools have to be effectively distributed to support education. They're also meant to collaborate with the other departments. So they're supposed to work closely with, for example, the Treasury. They're supposed to work closely with, if the Education Secretary, the DCMS, Department for Culture, Media and Sport. They have to do that because that's the only way they're going to ensure that they can have effective delivery of educational services. Anthony mentions that we met when the coalition government came into power. We met at a conference which was about building schools for the future, which is something that the Labour government set up. Michael Gove, who became the first Secretary of State for Education for the coalition party, stopped that programme straight away. If he hadn't, every single school in England would have been rebuilt by now. And the funny thing about this is when you look at that list, there's 9 Secretaries of State for Education. I missed off Michelle Donnellan because she was only in position for 3 days, I believe, in one of the reshuffles. Now, that is awful because if you think that a government was in power for 14, almost 15 years, to have 9 people in such a key role is a little bit of an insult to the subject itself. And that education is the most important thing in our lives. Now, Michael Gove, not even going to put a picture of him up today because it just annoys me. Lots of things he introduced. Don't worry about reading all the small writing, right? I'll talk you through things. He introduced free schools. And in the beginning, it wasn't even particularly strict. Basically, you had to fill in an online form, find an empty building. I know it had to have at least a sink and a toilet, and you could start your own school. It's much, much stricter since then, of course, obviously. He took the idea of the academies, which had been started by Labour in areas where there were failing schools. He took the idea of the academies and he put it right across the country so that we then had multi-academy trusts. We then had small groups of schools, clusters of schools. We have some trusts now that might just be in one geographical area. We have some that are completely national. It was all supposed to be about giving an academy its own autonomy to innovate and be flexible in the way that they taught. But the other thing that it did that affects everything, it made education competitive. So not only were we encouraging schools to improve and innovate to attract students, we were putting schools up against schools. And it led to the demise of the power of the local authorities, who previously had been the people in charge of our schools. So that's what Gove did. Those were his key reforms and initiatives. He had a lot of controversy and he had a lot of criticisms. Obviously, the unions did not like him very much, and they haven't really liked any of the Secretary of States for Education from that long list. But his policy significantly impacted on teachers because they were finding themselves doing more and more work, more and more testing and accountability. His approach to standardized testing sparked a lot of controversy because it meant that the way that children were learning and then being assessed was changing in schools. And here's a statistic that shouldn't shock you, but English school children are the most tested children in the entire world. Here, national curriculum. The curriculum changes were contentious because even though subject associations were consulted, they weren't listened to. So there were all sorts of things going on that were upsetting the teachers. We started to recruit less teachers. We started to see people leaving education earlier than they would be expected to. And at this point in time, if you've got a child yourself, maybe in year 11, or know somebody that has or has in the past, the students in year 11 in our schools in May of this year will start to spend at least 31.5 hours taking exams. The coursework won't matter apart from subjects like drama and art and design technology. So it's really now that even the exam boards are saying that the number of GCSE exams are far too much for the kids. And the other thing is, that's a very complicated page. I just wanted to show you that we are actually testing our children within 6 weeks of the first arriving in reception. We are testing them on phonics. We are testing them on national curriculum standards in maths and English. We are testing them on multiplication when they're in year 4. And when they get to year 6, they're doing the SATs. And the SATs are making them accountable to a national standard. And in some schools, all the children do in year 6 is to prepare for the SATs. Now, this was from the previous government. And in this point of time, can I let you know that this is still what we are doing? So let's move forward to 2025. And here is the Department for Education. I won't name everybody because I'm not here to introduce people, but these people represent all phases of education from early years right through to FE and HE, and there's also an SEND specialist there as well. Now, the Department for Education is led by Bridget Phillipson, and that's Bridget with the little red circle around her. Bridget is a very passionate MP. She was the Shadow Education Secretary for Education for a considerable amount of time, almost 4 years, I believe. And just by sheer coincidence, she comes from literally down the road from where I live. And she doesn't have a background in teaching. In fact, she's been an MP since she was 25, but she does have a background in politics. So if you now think about the Labour Party being in power since July of last year, these are some of the promises that they made before they came into power. Lisa Nandy said that there would be a review of the curriculum that would put arts, sports and music back at the heart of our schools and communities where it belongs. Bridget said that the arts need to be available to every child. Excellence is for everyone. Background must be no barrier to opportunity. And Bridget said she would help working class pupils defy the odds to succeed, just as she did. Now, I don't know if you listen to rumours, everybody. I listen to rumours. I don't necessarily act on them, but you might be able to know that there are rumours going around Parliament that Lisa Nandy might get the shove when Keir Starmer does his first reshuffle, and rumours going around Parliament that Bridget might also get the shove. They're only rumours, and I'm only saying that because having now got people in place that are saying the right things, wouldn't it be a disappointment to us if the new government also ended up with a long list of secretaries of state for education. No, we need consistency. We've never needed it more. And we need it because these are the headlines that we are seeing, right? We have huge problems with special needs in schools, with children being able to get their own plan for their emotional health and well-being. And we have schools who are not getting children attending, not just because of the problem with SEND, but because, to be honest with you, a lot of children quite like staying at home. There's a lot to do now these days. You know, you can do a little bit of homework maybe, but you can also get on your PlayStation, or you can talk to your friends all over the place on WhatsApp or on Snapchat or whatever you happen to use, or you could entertain yourself with 19-second videos on TikTok. So we have lots of children missing from our schools. There's never, ever been anything like this. And actually, in the teenage years, it's more likely to be girls than it is boys. We have a lot of problems with behaviour. Behaviour in schools, whether you can put that down to COVID, we just don't know. But there are lots of evidence that there is declining pupil behaviour. Um, we have a teacher shortage. It's as simple as that. And the new data on teacher retention underlines a key challenge. More than 40,000 teachers left the state sector in 2023, which is just under 10% of the teaching workforce, slightly higher than the year before the pandemic. And the problem is 40,000 teachers have not come into the state sector. Bridget came in with a promise of 6,500 new teachers by the end of, I don't know when, I think it was 2 years. It hasn't happened. We have unfilled vacancies, temporarily filled posts. We have brought teachers in from other countries. We have a lot of non-specialists teaching our subjects, not just in primary, but in secondary as well. And that is also an issue because if you are not a person who has a music background and you're teaching music, there isn't necessarily any professional development opportunities for you either. So I've got lots of friends who are teachers. I met up with 9 art teachers on Sunday for breakfast. And of those 9 art teachers, 3 of them who are under the age of 45 are all going to leave teaching in the next few months or have left teaching. So if you think about teacher stress, very poor work-life balance because of the amount of admin that people have to do now, especially in the art subjects. Inspection pressures, Ofsted. I don't need to give you detail about Ofsted because you see the headlines in the newspapers. Insufficient staff levels, high level actually, of teachers who are taking time out for health issues, excessive working hours. All of these, they're being appraised. They have internal accountability. There's also something that's happened in recent years is that parents have become a real pain in the butt to a lot of teachers. Parents can now directly email teachers. Parents have become very vocal. They have Facebook groups. I don't know whether you saw in the paper last week how 2 parents who have been complaining in a Facebook group about the recruitment process at their son and daughter's school were actually arrested by the police and put in a cell for 8 hours, the detail of which you will find if you do a Google search. The funding cuts are huge. The lack of professional development is huge. What other profession would you be in with such really tender students to nurture and care for, where you don't get the professional development to do that? There's lots of trends in education. Lots of the academy chains don't allow autonomy, right? You go in, you do 8 minutes of this, followed by 10 minutes of this, followed by 20 minutes of this, followed by 10 minutes of this. That's particularly damaging to creative subjects, where the autonomy of the teacher to start a lesson with a point or a starting point and then let the children's creativity take it in a different direction, for children to be diverse in their approach to work. That's going out of our schools. They do quizzes, they do tests. They do knowledge retrieval. They do growth mindset. And don't ever dare any of you mention things that were popular 15 years ago, like De Bono's thinking caps or learning styles, because you'll be hissed out of the building. And the other thing is accountability, and it's awful because we have something called EBAC, which is short for the English Baccalaureate. It's a set of GCSE qualifications, and it includes these core subjects: English, literature and language, maths, science, which could be
End of.
computer science, a foreign language, a humanity, that's history or geography, right? So if you think about it, the children have to take, to get the EBAC, they have to take double English, right? They have to do a GCSE qualification in mathematics and science. They either have to take a combined science or two GCSEs, biology, chemistry, physics, or you can even do three single sciences. So if you look at that, and then you look at the options blocks that schools produce, you will find that the arts, who used to be in several option blocks, are up against each other. So you're going to find drama and dance and art and music all in the same option block. So you're going to get rid of the children that want to actually specialise in the arts. This isn't in every single school, but it is in a lot of schools. And then you have this thing called Progress 8. And Progress 8 means that the government decided to call the subjects buckets of subjects. So they have higher value if they're in bucket 1 and bucket 2, English and maths. They have lower value if they're in the other subjects that are in the EBAC. And then you have your open group. You have what are called the bottom buckets. And in that, you will find the arts. And that's where we are in the eyes and the view of the government. And we really thought, I just find it so offensive, the whole word buckets. We thought that when the new government came in, that would disappear because it could go overnight and nothing would happen. Nothing would happen in schools. Children would go on picking their subjects. And I wonder, all of these people here, you look at that list, right? English, maths, science, humanities, history or geography, a foreign or an ancient language. How many of you have got the EBAC? Because I don't have it, which means that if I was in school at the time that these young people are in school, I would be seen as somebody who had failed the English Baccalaureate. I'd love it if you would put in the chat whether you think you have the equivalent of the EBAC. By the way, it doesn't exist as a certificate. Nobody asks for it in further education. Nobody asks for it at university. It's just a whim of Michael Gove, which he has admitted, that he wrote on the back of an envelope when he was having a dinner with Dominic Cummings the night before they had a press conference. It was not based on any research. It is completely the way that the options are done in schools. So the government appointed Professor Becky Francis. She's come in now to do a curriculum review. It's called the CAR, Curriculum and Assessment Review. The interim report came out a couple of weeks ago. People are not too happy with the interim report. And one of the reasons for that is that many people didn't even have time to fill it in. So I don't even know around this forum whether you, as an organisation, filled in the call for evidence, whether you're a governor in a school that filled it in. It took me ages to fill it in just for myself. I was meant to do it as a chair of governors. I never had time for it. So what we've got now is at least an admission from them that some of the subjects have maintained this importance in the EBAC, etc., and that's squeezing out of the subjects. We also have lots of evidence that the arts are being squeezed in some of our primary schools because we don't have specialist teachers, but because they're having to fit an awful lot of subjects in, and they find it incredibly difficult. So everybody was asked to then respond. Here you go. You respond to the curriculum. Then you respond to the curriculum review. So we're all out there responding. This is Access Art saying, Access Art would like to see a curiosity towards an understanding of the fact that the language which works for one subject may not work for art. And I think that's a really, really important word. um, language. And they went through the report and found that the word mastery, which is an invention again of the last government, appeared 12 times, and the word pedagogy appeared not at all. Maths was mentioned 61 times. The arts were mentioned 10 times. Dance was never mentioned at all, because dance and drama, as we know, do not even exist in the national curriculum. So we have to hold our politicians to account. That's what he said in March 24. And it's not just about the creative industries, is it? It's about the enjoyment and the pleasure and the happiness and the depth of feeling that the arts give us. So, one of the things I've also wanted to mention to you is a few years ago I picked this book up, and I hadn't been recommended it, but I just picked it up because I was just interested in it. And it's called The Wisdom of Crowds. I can't pronounce James's name, by the way, but I've had it with me ever since, and I'd still recommend it to other people. And it's why the many are smarter than the few, and how collective wisdom shapes not just businesses and economies, but societies and nations. And it's how the aggregation of information and groups are often better than anything that could have been made by any single member of a group. He is an American writer and a journalist, and he contends that groups of people can be collectively more effective at solving problems. They can be more effective at being innovative and making decisions than individuals or elite groups. And James argues that learning from the distributed intelligence and knowledge of large groups represents a much more powerful way to learn than in the isolation of what we could really call very rigid and hierarchical relationships. And that's backed up by other people. All right, so when Capra said this, and I love this quote really, we need to understand the relationship between living networks and values and human choices. Because in a human network, you have the whole realm of human consciousness and culture, and all those various characteristics: thinking, conceptual thought, symbols, and values. And he believes, and I believe, that a diverse community is a resilient community. And I believe that a diverse community is capable of adapting to changing situations. I wouldn't still be doing this after 15 years if I hadn't adapted through those 9 Secretaries of State for Education, through all those changes in education. The network is a pattern that's common to all life. It is in we see life, we see networks. So that's what I'm going to talk about today, and I've spelt programs the American way. I apologise. We have people here today, people from arts organisations. I'm just going to have a drink of water. Schools do really well when they have partnerships with local arts organisations, because then you get collaborative work going on, and that will enhance your creativity and learning and give you a good sense of ownership because it's part of your local culture. And enriched learning experiences is to try and show a school, whether it's a primary or a secondary or early years environment, that they can actually use all of the arts across curriculum areas. That you don't have to have these silos within our schools, especially things like at the moment visual literacy and oracy that they push on. And really, what our local organisations do is they get the artists, the dancers, the musicians, the actors, and that helps them to have role models and it helps their own skill and knowledge. I really think it's important, but I also think that one of the other things we need to do when we work with teachers, whether it's a 1 hour workshop or a half a day or a full day or something over several weeks, that we need to move a little bit away from the how to the why. Because when you ask teachers why they teach the arts, they can be incredibly dedicated. And they are the arts champions in their schools. And we need to give them space to offer solutions. And for me, the integration of the arts into education isn't just about the children, it's about the teachers and the teaching assistants and the people that are involved in it. And we must move from the how to the why and put the why first, because the why is the pedagogy. And the other thing you need to be aware of if you don't work in schools is there is a very serious funding crisis at the moment. Everything's gone up in price. My school, where I'm chair of governors, is paying about £20,000 a year more just for heating and energy, right? They're going to have to pay the national insurance contributions out of the school funding. They're going to have to fund the next teacher's pay rise out of the school funding. All of the consumables have gone through the roof so that you can't even afford a Pritt stick nowadays. It's that bad. So there isn't the money in schools to pay for an artist to come in, to pay for a theatre group to come in. It's just not there anymore. And the funding crisis means that many of the schools in this country will be going into a deficit budget for the next financial year until the government either finds or creates the opportunities to give more funding. So, what can you do at the moment? Stay on alert. Culturing Learning Alliance, if you never signed up to it, is fantastic. Their report card has just come out. Their report card is all the facts and figures you need from the past, right? And it's really important because in this report card, you will find that GCSEs, and we don't just measure at secondary, we measure in primary as well, but in GCSEs, the arts have fallen by 42% since 2010. That's terrible. There's also a statistic that 42% of schools don't enter any pupils for GCSE in music. 41% of schools do not enter any pupils for drama GCSE. That's shocking. So recently I've been involved in the Arts and Minds campaign, which is being backed by the National Education Union, which has 500,000 members in the United Kingdom. We're asking all organisations to become coalition partners in Arts and Minds. If you search for that, you'll find that you can sign up for it as an organisation. You can also look at some of the work that's happened so far. It had a big launch at the Tate Modern, and yes, we did get the celebs in, but you know what? If you put celebrities in, then the press come. They don't come if it's just teachers and me and people like us. The other thing that's really useful is to read the final research report by the wonderful Professor Pat Thompson and her team, researching the arts in primary schools, because that's powerful as well. They've found that the arts take up is lowest where the deprivation levels are the highest. But they've also showed in here that the arts rich schools that they went to visit, they're diverse. They have a real distinctive identity. They teach art and music, for example, every week. Other schools, you might get art for 6 weeks, then you might get DT for 6 weeks, then you might get something else for 6 weeks. They try to get specialist art teachers in, and they do feed into professional development as well. And they are led by people who believe in the arts rich school, and they don't make the expressive arts extracurricular or an add-on. They make it part of the culture and the practice, and they're very important people. So reading that will give you examples of schools that you may even want to visit. Um, what you don't realise is probably that we have a council for subject associations. So we have two subject associations for art. We have dance, we have drama, we have music on there, and that these subject associations are worth following or signing up to their newsletters, because then you'll be kept up to date for everything that's going on there. And this is quite an interesting little point. The United Nations, UNESCO, have written a global framework for culture and arts education, which has been adopted by approximately, I think, 92 countries. It was launched in Abu Dhabi in February of 2024. I went to the launch of that, and I sat at a desk for 3 days that had nobody from the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. We did not even send a representative. I have taken the last government to task over this, and I will take the current government to task over it, because why are we not part? Why are we not understanding what the framework of culture and arts education is across the world? Because that will help us to create our evidence bases. And at the moment, we have also the sad story that the last government created a cultural education plan group, a panel to advise the government on a framework which would amplify, extend, and signpost cultural education. That has disappeared basically overnight on the 4th of July. So it doesn't exist. I know two people on it who said they've heard nothing. So whether or not the DCMS will continue with that, we do not know. That would have helped you. That would have helped me. And then you will have seen this report, I think last year, that came out in November from the Sutton Trust. And the Class Act shows that the majority of people who are successful in the creative and cultural industries come from the middle class. Today we use the phrase upper class, privately educated children of today, and that the children in the other schools have stark class inequalities in access to careers, television, film, music, and in access to creative degrees. Now, what I've tried to do, and my voice is still here, is I have tried to throw at you practically everything I've got, because I want to open this up to a discussion. I know that around this table there will be people that have done things that are working against the tide of the arts being marginalised. The important thing about Culture Central is that these are shared, but we also need to look at what we can do. And don't laugh, but your MP is quite useful. There is an all-party parliamentary group for art, craft and design that met last week in Westminster that is there because I went to my own MP and had a conversation with her in 2012. And we shouldn't still be campaigning, but we are. There are grassroots networks around the country in terms of art. We've got one in the Northeast, which is really the biggest hug we could give to people in all these difficult times, knowing that they had a network because their local authority advisors have gone, their local authority CPD is gone. What I have found, and this is a very sad story, is that even though some of the academy trusts produce CPD opportunities, say for the arts, they don't share it outside of the trust. And we have even had some people have been told they shouldn't be in our grassroots network because it's not part of what the academy does, though they can't control that because we do it out of school hours. So all the things that I've done over the years, from Rainbow for Mr. Gove in 2012, where we got something like 5,000 children to write and draw a letter to Michael Gove, to last week holding to account the government for the lack of any support for children with really diverse needs, whether that's neurodiversity or physical needs in our schools. We must continue to do that. Everybody there today round your virtual table, you're there for a reason. It's not just a job, it's a mission, it's a vocation. It's an opening of doors for people that really need those opportunities that we all had. So at this point in time, if that's all right, folks, I'm going to stop my share. There you go. Remove my spotlight. Right.
Um,
Uh,
Thank you, Susan. We'll give you a chance to have a break for a second. That was
yeah,
a big tour of yeah, the past kind of lots of years of arts education, creative education. Before I'll give everyone a chance to kind of think of if they've got any questions or
yeah,
anything they kind of want to kind of contribute to the conversation. But I was just reflecting actually, I think we always say this, don't we? Like in the West Midlands, we forget about all of the good work that we do. And actually, I was just reflecting back, if we think about places like the Belgrade with their history and legacy of theatre and education, I always remember I was astounded by the fact that we found that Arts Award was developed here in a school in the West Midlands. That was the thing that came from the region as well. And I know there's hundreds of other good stories as well. And I think that that last point about actually making change and kind of advocating for it is really important and remembering the stuff that has happened. I mean, no, with the last government, we all remember when kind of cultural capital came into the Ofsted framework, and we were and that was seen as a potential real positive, for some places and for schools and for the sector as well. So I think, yeah, there's a lot to kind of reflect on, think about where we've got to, but what we want to do next as well. And I think that, yeah, the last thing that I'll say is just reminding people of when we came together at our summit in 2024, thinking about that kind of key part of the plan that we all spoke about as a sector. Actually, it came through really strongly thinking about kind of our regional strategy as a sector and having creativity at the heart of education, and lifelong learning and those creative career pathways as well as being really important. So yeah, I'd love to hear from people, and if people have got any questions or any reflections on what's happening really well here in the region at the moment and what more we could do as well.
Sally's got her
Sally.
hand. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello, Sally.
Thank you so much, Susan. That was just absolutely fabulous. Really, really beautifully articulated. It's definitely, that just highlights everything that we're trying to work on and with in Harlow Creates. We sit sort of within Harlow District Council, and we have sort of no budget and half a human being to try and support the schools in our area and also the home educators and the other children, young people and their grown-ups. And at the moment, we're really trying to look at how we can make the case for arts and creative subjects and their value to different people with different priorities. And I just wondered whether you, or frankly anyone around the table, to be honest, has any advice for me of places to go and find some good statistics, some good information, some great resource to help to convince other people of the value of arts and culture.
Well, I think there's quite a lot within the Cultural Learning Alliance.
Yeah.
Because that's going back. I think they must have been about 2012, Anthony, mustn't they? And that's got all the statistics there. In terms of kind of making an impact on government, I think you should all go and see your MPs next week. I really do. You can make an appointment, seriously. But I tell you where the biggest support comes from in Westminster, and that is actually the House of Lords, where if somebody is passionate about music, and a lot of them are, they're always going to be passionate about music. If you're in charge of DCMS, you might be in charge of work and pensions after Easter, so you don't keep that consistency going through. And there's quite a lot of debates in the House of Lords about the arts, and they're powerful debates. So they've got our end of things. But anybody else who would like to offer a solution there to Sally?
Rachel's got a hand up. Rachel?
Mine was a question, sorry. So it's a slightly old and new hand.
The other thing, Sally, is that what I tried to do today was, because I was training initial teachers in training for art about a month ago, and I started to talk about Michael Gove, and the course leader stopped me and she said, "They haven't heard of him." Well, of course they haven't.
They were children.
Yes, Gove's children, aren't they? The children coming in, the teachers coming into education were born after the year 2000. And the thing is, they don't remember the good times either. They never had the good times. They never had cultural partnerships, creative partnerships, and find your talent and all of those opportunities. It wasn't there for them. So you've got to not just educate the people that you want to change policy, you've got to educate, I think, a generation of young teachers as to what the power of the arts is as well.
Absolutely. I would wholeheartedly agree with you on that.
Cool.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go and have a really good stare some of those resources that you've already linked us to. Thank you so much. That's brilliant.
Thanks, Sally. And I'd flag as well, actually, I think having a really clear understanding of the policy, the history, the practice, and all of those kind of resources, but also really understanding your own organisation's unique kind of perspective in it, where everyone's argument is slightly different, actually, for what they want to do and the value of the arts kind of within education as well. And being able to really clearly articulate that, I think, is really valuable as well. So understanding both kind of like what the wider sector is doing, but your organisation's unique position within that too. Rachel, sorry to hold you up.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you so much, Susan. I was really interested in your comments around grassroots networks
Yes.
and which networks you have observed are the most sustainable and have the most impact.
The network that I set up is, first of all, you need a snappy name. So we called NEATN, which is Northeast Art Teacher Educator Network, right? So people remember it. We don't have any money at all, okay? But we have a steering group, and that steering group is 9 teachers from different backgrounds, right, in different ages. Like I said, some of them were losing, though they were going out of education, which is a bit sad. And we meet always the week after half term because people are less tired. And we do twilight meetings between 5 and 7 p.m. And we meet in a local art gallery. We don't give them any money, but we take the tea and the coffee in. And we have attracted visitors from all over the country. Extraordinary, actually, that people travel up. We had the Royal Academy in touch recently. We had the National Gallery, who sent 2 speakers up at the meeting in the autumn. So we honestly keep in touch through getting people's personal email addresses, because you know what? Nobody reads their work emails anymore, or not as we should read them. You just queue them up and put exclamation marks and flags on them, so it looks like the United pulling people together. Teachers still use Facebook. I think it's because it's visual as well. You can put pictures up. And we just hand over to people. We just say, right, there's a meeting coming up about such and such. Have you got some speakers? Have you got a project you want to talk about? And we do it that way. Completely grassroots. No funding.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Susan. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. If you ever want a session on you yourself, if you ever want to chat on setting up a network, please just get in touch.
I'd love to, please, Susan. I will get your details and pick up after the meeting. Thank you.
There's a hand up there, Friction Arts, I think. Is it, Anthony?
Yeah, is that okay?
Sorry. Yeah, go for it, Sandra.
Hello.
Sorry.
Hello, and it's just great to be here. I mean, I have to go to a BEMA meeting every second. Anyway, thank you, Susan. And just I want to polish your boots because they're big, they're on, and they're making a huge difference. We've been Friction Arts. We're based in quite a tough area of Birmingham called Highgate, and we're the cultural lead as part of a cultural action areas program, and we've got a whole program called Home in Highgate, and that includes working with a really fantastic school, and we're going to create a cultural plan with them, because I think if we just go and deliver and we just raise money to put work in, it won't be effective. I'm going to have to talk to Anthony about that, because I'm not actually sure how to draw one up properly yet, and there may be people at the table that can help with that. But the idea is that our 6 partners, that we start to cross network how Birmingham Open Spaces Forum works with the school, and etc. etc. But what I'm also keen to do, and I think the head is as well, is to find the schools that don't respond to the arts offers, and how do we get in there, because of those barriers and those challenges of being able to reach the children when there's and I'm not going to judge why people are gatekeepers. I just know that they're really stressed at the moment, and Birmingham is falling apart and doesn't have the finance for a lot of things at the moment. So it's also about once the idea is, once we build the partnerships with the schools that really get the arts offer, because that's, you know, you've got your allies there, then how do we, I mean, do you know routes to those challenges of how we then access those schools that have very little arts confidence.
That's a difficult one because I think 80% of secondary schools are academies and 40% of primary schools are academies. And some of the schools within trusts, they just lock themselves in. You're not allowed in, basically, unless you're from within that team and that vision and that mantra. When Ofsted changed their framework in 2018 with a focus on curriculum, that was a way in because schools knew they might get deep dived. Everybody heard that expression in, say, art or design technology or music. They wouldn't get a deep dive in drama or in dance, by the way, because they don't exist in the national curriculum, which is absolutely appalling. So they really upped their game. I found that they upped their game. But now the new Ofsted leader, who you're going to laugh at this, everybody, he's called Sir Martin Oliver. And do you know what he was in a previous life? He was an art teacher. Unbelievable. So if you ever meet the guy, just say, "Oh, I've heard all about you. You're an art teacher," because that is just so good. And now what he's become, I don't know. But he's now proposing that there will be a new framework for Ofsted, which won't include deep dives. So therefore, a school isn't worried, as they are now, about getting a deep dive into the arts. I think it's quite difficult. I think the professional development of the teachers is a key in. If you can ignite a passion in a teacher for the arts, they will pass that on in their school. The young teachers are the difficult ones because they haven't got that background or experience, maybe even from their own education, of the arts being important. That was a really long, winding answer. I'm sorry. I don't know if I've
No,
answered.
it's fine. It's just that, we've actually managed to buy our own building. We've got something, that's what I'm doing in 100 years' time. It's going to be quite youth focused. We're just about to open it. I just had a massive build done on it. So I'm, but even when we're talking to schools about we've got free offers in the Easter, we're not getting, we're saying, can you please just get these to parents, because then we've got loads of stuff happening over Easter. Some really kind of building block work, let's come to a park, let's have a picnic together, some really simple stuff, but all the building blocks towards kind of really creating a motorway of opportunities rather than just a trickle. The problem is that we can't even get some of the flyers, past past the secretary. So I mean, I'm good at strategies and tactics. I absolutely know how to seduce with integrity, but we are struggling at the moment to sort of get across some schools. So I just wonder if there's I mean, this is all time and we're all time poor, but whether there's a kind of almost like an informal directory of they're a good school or they've got good links, and like our head's best friends with another school head, and who are their links.
Do you know what? One thing that's, sorry to cut you off, Sandra. One thing that's really good for looking at that actually is like looking at your arts mark schools, your arts award schools as well, places where that's happening. Those are really good places to kind of find out. I know that we've got just a couple of minutes left. So Kim and John, should we do your questions together? Oh, is Kim gone? Kim's just disappeared from my screen. Oh, Kim, did you have? Ah, hi, Kim. Sorry,
Hi.
you moved close.
No, that's okay.
Let's see your question.
Yeah, Susan, thank you so much for that. And I had a question, just a couple of requests. So, number one, I was interested in finding out how often that network that you were speaking about meets yearly. Number two, I know that Rachel asked you if she could speak with you about networks, and I'd be keen to be in that conversation as well, if that would be possible.
You just email me both of you. Email me, and I'll definitely set something up.
That's great. And then number three, I'm a SEP. I'm the Warwickshire Cultural Education Partnership, which sounds like it might be a huge organization, but it's literally me working 3 days a week. And I think that that's probably the same for my colleagues across the country. And some of us have been meeting regionally. So Ian, who's on this call, and some other SEPs and May got together, and that was great. It felt like a sea change in terms of that networking really pulling people together. And so now we're trying to get a larger West Midlands wide group together to start talking. So I put that, if anyone knows any West Midlands SEP contacts, if you could put my email in the chat, that would be really helpful. I do think there's something in what you're talking about, that networking. But it feels like the schools are looking at really long-term planning, whereas a lot of the artists are on more short-term planning. And I wondered if you could speak to that a little bit in terms of how you manage between those two time frames.
Susan, sorry to jump in as well. If it's okay, we'll take the question from John as well, just so we can wrap up at 10:30. And sorry, Kim, to jump on your question as well. Hi, John.
Hello, John.
Hi, sorry, this is probably a bigger can of worms than we've got time for. But you started the conversation saying that education was devolved in the UK.
Yeah.
I live on the Shropshire Welsh border, and so look across the Wales quite enviously with their approach to arts in education, and just wondered if you felt there was any way to take what the Welsh government are doing in arts and education and help that cross-fertilise across the border into England.
Absolutely, and we invited somebody to come and talk at one of our all-party parliamentary groups when we had the last government about that. There are some people who have been critical of the Welsh curriculum, but they haven't really given it enough time, have they, John? Because it hasn't been embedded in that sense.
Absolutely.
So I think once they've embedded it and they've got something statistical, then you're going to get politicians listening. They don't want to just listen to something as being nice. They want to know what percentage of this, what percentage of that, accountability, etc. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I bet you're looking over the border.
Well, my partner works in a lot of Welsh schools doing arts. The old what used to be called creative partnerships projects.
Yeah.
Very similar. Those kind of getting artists into work directors to develop a project. Yeah, they're brilliant.
And they've linked the arts to well-being.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which is important. And Kim, your question about when do we meet? We meet 3 times a year. We're doing one online, one in face-to-face, one online. We're doing it like that. But we run skill shares. So a department opens up its department, again, 5 till 7 p.m. People come and they have to bring their own refreshments and stuff like that. And we ask them to put £3 in a biscuit tin, and we do things on printmaking or visual literacy or sculpture, and we do it that way. And we also get involved in a national initiative called the Big Draw. So we do it like that.
Well, sorry to cut us off at 10:30, but I know that people normally have got lots of other meetings and stuff in. I think the other thing, just to kind of wrap it up, is that I would say actually, just even with the organisations in this room and other kind of organisations in the region, a great place to look is all of the evaluations and reports that organisations have done of their own practice. And I'm looking at Stan's CAF, who've done loads of this over the years, and obviously I know that worked pretty well. And many other organisations, the RSC. He's just put a load of really great stuff out at the moment as well about kind of I forget the term, Rachel, but principles and practice kind of for creative and cultural education. So have a look at those and be informed by each other's practice. And just lastly to say as well, particularly for if you're members of Culture Central, just within the team, actually, we also have a lot of expertise and within this area as well. So if anyone would value kind of a half-hour discussion with us and to kind of dig into our knowledge as members, you'd be more than welcome to kind of dig into that as well. But thank you all so much for coming along. And thank you again, lastly, to Susan for a really great and comprehensive tour of what's going on in arts education at the moment. Thank you.
And we have the wisdom of crowds in this room, don't we?
Exactly.
Thank you.
Much more to come.
Lovely to meet you.
Thanks, everyone.